Okay, so today I wanted to show you guys some skin retouching tricks that I use, and I chose this natural available light photo of Kristen because it's a little bit different than retouching a glamour shot, and it's a little bit more common to what most people are going to be needing in their Photoshop arsenal of skills. So we start by duplicating the layer, of course, so that it's editable. It's very important that when you're using Photoshop that you want to always save the original file and not do anything destructive to the original file. So as you can see, Kristen has some freckles that we want to get rid of, as well as some skin imperfections. So what we're going to do is, on our duplicate layer, we're going to choose the spot healing brush tool, and we're just going to gently brush over some of those imperfections. And then once we're finished retouching all of those, we will create another duplicate layer of the background image, and we'll retouch things that we want to have a lower opacity. So for example, on the first layer that we're deleting completely, things like hairs in the eyes or skin imperfections will go. But on the layer that's going to have a different opacity, we'll do things like wrinkles, because we don't want to completely get rid of all of the texture of the skin, because then a photograph starts to look unnatural. It's also important to keep your layers clear and identified, so I've named the one skin and one wrinkles. The reason is I want this skin layer, that's where I'm removing 100% opacity. I'm taking out the imperfections, whereas the wrinkle layer, that is going to fade the opacity, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I've chosen the patch selection tool just for expediency, and we're going to pull out some of these extra wrinkles under the eye, and then later on we'll pull down the opacity, as you can see, so that it still looks nice and natural. And now that I've done everything I want on the wrinkles layer, I'm going to choose the opacity that looks best, and we're going to look at some different, this is 0%, 50%. I feel like it still looks nice and natural, so we're going to select all those layers and convert them to a smart object. And once we've done that, we're going to rename the smart object to original. Anytime we need to go back and edit the original, we'll be able to double click on this smart object and open up those files that we just saved. Now we're going to make a duplicate copy of the original layer, and what we're going to do here is we are going to soften up the skin a little bit and take out some of the discoloration. And so we're going to choose a surface blur, and what you're going to do is you play around with the sliders until what you really want to see is you want to see the colors smoothing over. You still want to be able to make out that it's a face. Obviously, we will be able to take out the blur from certain sections of the face, and I'll show you that in a moment. So don't worry about how blurry the eyes are getting here. Go ahead and apply that filter. Now once that's done processing, you can see that this image is way too blurry, and we don't want that. So we're going to also duplicate the original smart object, and we're going to do another filter called go to filter, other, and high pass is what you want. And what you want to choose is something that's really showing off the detail of the skin. It's a great way to sharpen your images. So we're going to try 2. That doesn't seem quite enough. I'm going to try 3 for this photo. That looks about right to me. So we're going to go ahead and go with 3, 3.5. And that looks good. So we're going to apply that filter, and then what we want to do is change it from that hard gray color to a light filter. So we're going to choose hard light. Now as you can see, this looks very unnatural. We're not going to leave our photograph like this. What we're going to do is I'm going to hide the sharpen layer, and I'm going to create an inverted mask on the softening layer for the skin. Now what this allows me to do is to only paint in where I want to see those the softness. So choose the opacity of your brush, make sure that it's on white because we're in the inverted layer mask, and I'm just going to brush in that surface blur. And you'll want to try some different opacities in different areas. You might want it to have a higher opacity on the cheekbones and maybe a lower opacity in the chin, etc. Whatever is going to make your photograph look the smoothest. Now there's a lot of ways to do this frequency separation technique. The way I'm showing you today, I don't always do it like this, but it's very convenient when you want your sharpening mask to look different than your softening mask. So what I'm doing is I'm applying just a regular, what I'm doing is I'm applying a layer mask to the sharpening layer, not an inverted layer mask. So it's automatically sharpening the whole photo. I want the hair to look nice and crisp, etc. So then we're going to go in and we're going to take out a bit of the sharpening in certain areas where it's looks a little bit unnatural. And now that we're happy with how this looks, we're going to create another layer. And the type of layer it's going to be is soft light. And we're going to go ahead and fill that with a 50% gray opacity. And this is going to be our dodge layer. So I'm going to go over and choose the dodge tool. And then I'm just going to sort of highlight some areas that I think should be a bit brighter. We'll bring up the colors of her eyes and the pupils, and on women it's nice to highlight areas where they would normally highlight for their makeup anyway, like the upper cheekbones, the forehead, the bridge of the nose, as well as the high part of the eyebrow. Now once we've finished with that, we're also going to create another layer filled with opacity, and we're going to use the burn tool to darken down areas that might need to be darker. And one quick shortcut I like to use is the curves, and sometimes instead of just dodging and burning for hours on end, I might want to take a quick shortcut and use the curves palette. So here we're going to test out some different curves on Kristen so that you can see the quick shortcuts that Photoshop has available. The medium contrast makes it a bit darker, and the lighter contrast is going to make it lighter. And since this portrait was intended as a sort of hopeful, bright portrait, I'm going to stick with the brighter contrast curve. Now as I'm going in for some last minute touch-ups, I see that these hairs that I originally left in are starting to bother me now. I thought they would be okay, but this is why we saved the Smart Object. So go ahead and double click on the original and you can see it opens up the Smart Object. I can go in and use the healing brush tool or whatever tool I deem appropriate for this part of the project and take out those extra hairs. And then as soon as I'm finished, I save the Smart Object and it updates the original file, which is just simply amazing. Now here I've duplicated the original Smart Object and I'm pulling it to the top layer just so that we can quickly turn it on and off and see the difference between what we've done from the Smart Object to all of these highlights and skin retouching things that we did. And congratulations, you now know how to do frequency separation retouching, which is also known as airbrushing. This is used a lot in the fashion industry as well as professional headshots. You're not going to see a lot of this in everyday casual portraits, but it does look very professional. You can still see the texture of the skin, which is what makes it so important. We don't ever want to lose pores. We don't ever want our photographs to look plasticky. We want them to look like real people, but we still need to take out the imperfections because we are in the advertising industry and people are very critical. So congratulations, new technique. If you have any questions, click the link below and contact me, and I can answer your questions by email. Have a great day.